curse words, and sarcasm were used in the making of this video. Hello, Jamie from Salty Card Creations, back with an Ink Road Stamps design team make using that magic circle window die that is currently in the Ink Road Stamps shop, die shop. And I'm also bringing in Honey and the Honey Add-On. The Honey was a limited, your monthly subscription one. I think she's adorable. And then, of course, the Honey Add-On, which was still in the shop a month ago when I put it in my cart and waited patiently for it to get here. So I think it's still in the shop, but don't quote me on that. It was a month ago. So I'm bringing in both the front die here and then that circle. The circle is going to help me to figure out where her placement needs to be. Now, it doesn't have to be exact at this point. I just kind of needed to know how far over on my piece of paper to put my actual stamp. Now, I'm going to bring in some alcohol-friendly ink here. So I think I'm using either Hero Arts Intense Black or Lawn Fawn's Jet Black ink. Either one works well for alcohol ink coloring. So once I have her stamped, I'm going to bring in the other die. So this is the one that goes on the inside. Now, I'd started it with that on the outside and realized, it's really not showing me where my actual cut lines are going to be. So I did bring it back in. So this one, you're only going to see everything that's on the inside of those kind of L-shaped cut lines. So keep that in mind when you're laying things out. And then, of course, the arrow shows where your top of your die is going to end up when it's opened. So not when it's closed, but when it's open. So keep that in mind when you're laying things out and trying to figure out placement. So my sentiment was a little bit crooked on this one, but I can cheat it when I actually go to cutting it out with the die. So I did use some VersaFine Onyx black ink for this one. I wanted to do some ink blending over the top. I knew this one was going to be nice and dark and crisp, and so I wasn't worried. I wasn't alcohol ink coloring over the top, so I wasn't worried about smearing in that respect. I did bring in my heat tool, and I did heat set it. I did not do any embossing on anything. I didn't want anything to be sticky or to catch on that mechanism. There is a circle die in the stamp set that if you want to do a circle, you can do your image in that circle and then cut it out, and then do your other die, you glue it on top of your piece of paper, and then you use the die cuts for the actual mechanism. So keep that in mind if you don't want to do, I don't know, one layer like this. That's an option. Also, making sure you use a heavy enough weight cardstock. So I used either Accent Opaque 100-pound cardstock or Nina Classic Crest Solar White 110-pound cardstock. One or the other, I'm not exactly sure. I knew that the one was going to work with alcohol markers and the other one would work okay for ink blending. I was just going for paper like the GSM being high enough. So it kind of is what it is. I did do some ink blending on that back piece, and then for the front piece, before I can ink blend, of course, I need to do some masking. It's not my favorite thing in the world to do, but on rare occasions, I will do it. So usually I use Avery L removable adhesives, and I can run that through my brother's ScanNCut. I didn't have a piece out on my desk, and it's kind of tucked in a drawer, and I had to move a table, and I was not that energetic. So I just used some masking paper that was on my desk as well, and yeah, did the hand cutting thing. I know it probably would have taken me less time to dig out my Avery L removable adhesive and run it through the Brother's ScanNCut, but whatever. So I am just using some close to my heart dye inks here. I did do dye inks because I didn't want anything to cover up my background or my inside sentiments. I could have used, I guess, oxides on the front panel here, but I wanted my inks to match with the other, and I kind of liked the misty, sporadic ink blending on the front. It's not perfect. It's kind of splotchy in spots, but I thought it added to that mystical feel. So I know that ultimately I want my front to kind of blend in to my inside. So I am bringing in the stars again here. These are from the Inked Kylie set that I used for recently. So it's the space Kylie. Anyways, it's the space lady one. So I did bring those stars in to kind of add some stars to the end of her wand there. And then of course my favorite part is the reveal, because I love to see, you know, how the ink blend and that image that I'm going to color are going to work. But so I'm bringing this one back in just to kind of show me where, because it doesn't cut out a circle, it actually just cuts the lines in my top piece here that I'm going to need for the mechanism to work. So it's going to end up being a square card. I cut it wrong. I will explain that when I get that far. And when I mean I cut it wrong, I mean I cut it down to the wrong size square, but it's all right. So I'm bringing in my Winter Wonderland palette here for my pinks, and then I'm bringing in Skin White and Pastel Pink, maybe? No. Powder Pink, sorry. Powder Pink for my skin tones here, coming in with the darker shade of Powder Pink, and then coming in with the Skin White to go over the top. I did try to give her a little bit of cleavage there because she looked a little flat, and I'll show you how I do it on the dress. I actually think it kind of turned out pretty good. So if, you know, you're looking to give your inked girl some boobs, here's how I do it. So you come in with your darker marker and kind of, you know, draw an underside bra, I guess. Give her underwire. And then coming in with my metal tone here, I'm just kind of adding in my second layer. And then coming in with my lightest tone. So this is my lightest color. I only did the lightest color over the top to give her the illusion of kind of like cleavage. So it kind of worked. And then I did come back in with that darker powder pink marker again and just touched up a little bit there to kind of draw the line up for the cleavage, I guess. So, because it kind of got hidden when I went over it again. So I'm bringing back in the pinks. I probably should have gone with a lighter pink for her cheeks. I do go over them again with that Skin White to kind of blend them out. But I did bring in some picked raspberries for her lips there. And then I'm just bringing in G190 for the wings. I felt it kind of went with my background color here. I think it's what I brought in. I usually just go color match with my color swatches for my markers to kind of fill in where, if you can see, there's a shadow on the underside of her leg and the underside of her dress because I wasn't great at my masking. I just find a marker that is as close as possible to my background color and use that as my coloring. I could have gone in with gray and it would have just given it a shadow effect. So either one would have worked fine. I've also found that with those thin little lines on the inked girls, just bringing in a gel pen to do some of the detail work works wonderfully easy and fine. And then I'm just coming in with some browns for her hair tones here. I did bring in a Spectrum Noir like glitter pen or glitter brush marker to just add some glitter and shine to it. Remember, I don't want to add any bulk or anything that's going to catch, and so that was an easy enough way to add some sparkle without losing the integrity of, you know, that mechanism possibly not working. So once I come in with my lighter tone of hair, I usually come back in with my darker tone after it's dried just to add a little bit more, I guess, detail to it. And then I'm bringing in just a Stardust pen to add a little bit of glitter to her hair. So this is, you know, the part where I have to make sure I have everything lined up properly. So I am going to tape this down. I kind of want to make sure that my circle isn't going to go over her dress because the circle is going to come in handy later on. And so I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Now keep in mind that the arrows kind of line up together. So that's kind of why I have the one over the top. It's, you know, those are both going to be my top points, so I want to keep them that way. I did come in and add a little bit of ink blending and of course a little bit of stars to that bottom part because I knew that my circle was going to need to get cut out as well. So that way it coordinates well with the rest of the card. Now I am going to go into real time in just a little bit here. So I will say I cut this down. I was thinking I could get away with a 5x5 or 5 and I think I was thinking 5 1/4, but I ended up doing 5x5 and it was not big enough. I ended up being off a little bit. So keep that in mind. I did start with an A2 card base basically, so a 5.5 by 8.5 piece of paper, and then I was cutting. I probably should have just cut it down to 5.5 and kind of gone a 5.5, 5.5 square, and then once it was all put together, come back in and trim a little bit if I felt I could wiggle it. But you know, in for a penny, in for a pound. I make it work. It's all good. So here is that real-time tutorial for you. So this part goes on the back, and so when you take it apart, keep in mind, so this one, when you're laying it over the top, you're making sure that that arrow is pointed up. I might have cut this one wrong. We will see in a little bit. And then this one, see where the arrow is up? That's actually where your end point is going to be, but when you put it together, it's kind of over to the side. So don't necessarily look at that part. Here's hoping I didn't mess it up on my side piece here. But so you're going to take, so that half slit that it cuts, you're going to thread through the bigger tab there, and then you're going to have the bottom 2 tabs kind of hugging the inside there. So they're on the opposite side, if that makes sense. And then for my inside piece here. So this one, I don't know how to show this one on camera to make it make sense, but we want this piece all the way over here. Oops, I'm going to pop back out. Pop that one back in. Okay. Now these little pieces kind of tuck into the back side. So if you can see this one here, I don't know if this is going to show you very well, but once we get the first one in, making sure your tab is lined up. The other thing is to make sure that circle, I mean, once you're done, you want to make sure that circle fits right. So we're going to just pop those in. And I did this on the bottom piece is 100 pound accent opaque cardstock, and my top piece here is either Bristol Smooth or I think it's Bristol Smooth because I wanted it to be a heavy enough cardstock. So you should get a little star in the middle, and you know, if you make sure you put the circle over the top because you know that part's going to get cut out. And then on the back side here, as long as this one is tucked up here, you're going to get a perfect star on the back. There you go. So you get that perfect star on the back. Now, the video I watched said do double-sided adhesive on this piece. I actually just kind of did a thin layer of glue all the way around, and it worked fine. So this is going to hold the front piece onto the back or through the back so it doesn't undo it. Line up your little circles there. I did a very thin glue so it didn't seep through. I guess that's probably my, my hint. This is the third one I put together. I did a couple of practice ones. I will show you those when I'm done here. And then for the little brad, you kind of bend your tabs over and then kind of let them meet in the middle here. And then this one, you're just going to tuck it through the front, and then you just fold down those pieces there. And then you're going to take this piece and you line it up on the front. This is just going to cover that mechanism there. I don't know if it needs to be, well, I suppose it's probably, if you don't want your little star pieces to show, you kind of have to use the whole thing. I'm going to try to cheat it over just a little bit so it doesn't cover up my And I just did a couple of drops of glue on that front piece there. And then I'm just going to hold that in place, let it dry. And then you should be able to go, whoops. This piece should be movable. And so then I'm just going to go and try to slide it here. There we go. What am I catching on? Of course. Okay. Did we not? Why? Why? Oh, I was catching on something there. Okay. So there we go. Kind of getting it to wiggle that first time is a task, right? Okay. So there we go. So something must not be quite lined up in my center pieces there. Okay, so I think we're good there. And then back over. So I'm a little off on my side here. I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll see. And then just work it a couple of times to get it to go. You probably want to keep it at 5.5, like 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 is probably your smallest. I did 5 by 5 on this one. I probably should have kept it at 5 1/4 by 5 1/4, but that is the inside. So the starter side is going to be that one. I'm gonna problem solve a little bit, and I'll be back in, regular time, or not regular time. I really just needed to kind of look at it, make sure that I could cut it down a little bit and make it work, because yeah, it was sticking out on the one side. So I was able to kind of just cut off a little bit of that back circle. It didn't ruin the integrity of it. It still worked just fine. Keep in mind that if I'd have kept it a little bit bigger, I could have probably done a little bit more of tape to get it to stick a little bit better if I'd have kept it at 5.5 by 5.5 inches. Just keep that in mind. So I am bringing in some double thick foam tape here. This just is going to help leave room for that mechanism to work. I don't know if you would have needed double thick for this one. You probably could have gotten away with regular thickness foam tape. Keep in mind that you don't want anything to get in the way of those little tabs that are stuck on the inside there for your turn mechanism. The other thing is, I do end up towards the end here, I do come in with a powder tool, and that really made it work a lot better. So I just cut down a piece of regular cardstock to 5.5 inches, and then scored it at 5.5 inches. So you have your square card base here. And then I'm going to bring in, I decided to go with a pink border on this one. I just felt it would make the little honey pop a little bit better on that fairy, and of course the little star on her wand. So I'm just going to glue that onto my card base here. And then bring in some, take off the backs of those adhesive pieces and then add just a little bit of glue onto them. This gives me just a little wiggle room just in case I didn't get it laid down exactly where I want it. I can usually, pull it up really fast and work from there. Now, for that little tab, it kind of blends in, right? So I'm just going to partially die cut that piece there and just get the tab part of it. So I'm just going to, you see me cutting it off, and I'm just going to make it kind of wiggle it underneath there, add it with a little bit of glue. I don't want to do too much glue. I don't want it to ooze out and touch onto the front panel there, so keep that in mind. And then, of course, I need to tell the recipient to turn the wheel. So I'm going to bring in I'm going to bring in that honey stamp set again, and the one sentiment on there says something something magic, and so I decided the magic would work, like, turn for magic kind of sort of thing. So I'm just going to partially stamp or partially ink that sentiment, add on the magic, and then of course bring in I think that was a gel pen. No, I did use the other. So I'm just bringing in a fine liner here and then drawing an arrow in If you have an arrow stamp, go ahead and use it. And then I'm just bringing in the Stardust gel pen again to add a little bit of glitter to it. So then it turns. And see how it's not turning all the way to the top here? It was driving me nuts because it works usually. And so it's just, I think it was just getting a little bit stuck on, the paper was like not behaving itself, because I was like, oh no, it was fine. It really just needed a couple more wiggles around, a couple more trips around the sun to get a little bit better. I did bring in that powder tool and I added the powder, and once I added the powder it was gliding and moving like super easy. So here is that finished card for you. Now I could have added some rhinestones to the outside where the circle isn't actually moving, so keep that in mind. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. Keep getting, snarky and inky and bippity boppity. Fuck you. Over and out. Bye.